I recently purchased Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 3 Full Burst off of Valve's Steam service. Now, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to review a game based off the Naruto series, or if I'm the perfect person to review it, as I'm not a big fan of the franchise, but at the same time I don't hate it. I've always been more of a Dragon Ball fan, but I'm kind of indifferent, and this is sort of an unbiased look at the game. Anyways, Full Burst is an expansion to Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 3, but as I haven't played Nuns 3, I don't know what Full Burst adds to whatever it is Nuns 3 had. I think it's more characters, costumes, and a slight expansion on the game's already rather large story mode, dubbed Ultimate Adventure. Now, I didn't watch the cutscenes as I'm not particularly interested in the story of Naruto, but I also skipped them because the voice acting is pretty hit or miss. Naruto's voice is kinda like Wolverine rubbing his claws on a chalkboard and then someone recorded it in Audacity and raised the pitch. But other characters like Kakashi, Guy Sensei, and the fourth Hokage, whose name seems to escape me at the moment, all sound pretty good. That is until the sound starts glitching up. I've had this happen each and every time I boot the game up from Steam, and the game will run smoothly, and then I'll hear some sort of scratchy noise, like my speakers are dying or something. And it's not my speakers because the in-game music still sounds fine, actually sounds great even. That's another thing I want to comment on, just sort of leaving that by the side there. The music is surprisingly good. I don't care much for the OST in Naruto, I've heard it, and ultimately, this game has some pretty damn good music. I'm rather surprised by that because I find that when it comes to anime games, it's the really bad ones that tend to have really good music, but in this case, Naruto is actually a good game with some pretty good music, actually. I'm surprised. So, enough on sound. No, the game runs rather smoothly, actually. My computer is by no means a powerhouse. It's not a high-end gaming machine, but the frame rate is almost always at a constant 60 frames per second, and the game looks stunning even on standard definition. I don't play it in HD. I don't play games in on anything higher than lowest settings, so I'd never run the chance of it, hiccuping. Now, I mentioned the story a bit earlier, and it's pretty good. I mean, no, not the actual, the writing or anything, it's meh. But the story mode is actually rather robust. You have moments where you get to reenact fights from the show, which are average at best, and there's some boss fights with larger opponents, like in Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Tenkaichi, how you have the fights with giant Great Ape Vegeta and Metacooler, and this game has something like that. But they're not as enjoyable to watch. They're more enjoyable to play, but they're not as enjoyable to watch. The actual game itself has you, the story mode has you running around in an almost RPG platformer environment at times. Then there's other times where it actually becomes, I want to say Dynasty Warriors, but I actually had fun playing this. I've never had fun playing Dynasty Warriors, and those are based off of some of those are based off of anime I actually like Fist of the North Star and One Piece. But here, it's actually reasonably fun, and it never feels like a chore to just be mowing through baddies. It's actually kind of enjoyable. The in-game world is actually rather large and quite fun to explore, and that's it's the best part about the game, actually. Is, I mean, I won't lie, despite not caring for the series, the Naruto universe is actually one of the most expansive and fastest growing fictional universes out there. It's fairly large, and it's actually quite fun to traverse. Now, that's neither a good thing nor is it bad. It's good for fans of the series. If you want to feel like a part of the series world, it's a treat for fans, but for someone on the outside looking in, not so much. I know very little about the series. I watched up until the Shonen exams, I think that's what it's called, early in the series, and found myself rather bored. So for Naruto fans, the story mode is a great feature, but for the series outsiders, maybe not. It's not like Arkham Asylum where you can just go into it not knowing a damn thing about Batman, or maybe you're like, fuck, I don't even know if his parents are still alive, stuff like that, and you can still have a good time. But Full Burst is exclusively for the Naruto fan base. Another problem with the story mode is how robotic the world is. It doesn't seem like it's alive. The NPCs you interact with say the same things and do repetitive motions, as opposed to actually doing stuff. I suppose it's a bit much to ask from a licensed game, but come on. I ran headfirst into a woman carrying a box and she didn't so much as flinch. I've been holding off on talking about the actual combat for a while, as I'm playing the game while I'm writing this review. But to put it into a single word, meh is pretty much all I can muster. It's not as good as the Budokai Tenkaichi games or Clash of Ninja, but it's leagues better than Ultimate Tenkaichi or Ashura's Wrath. I think the guys at CC2 need to play games other than the ones they develop though, because they could use a major lesson in designing the in-game controls. B is the attack button. B. B. If video games have taught me anything, it's that the attack button is always left of the jump button. It's odd and uncomfortable, and it makes attacking in the air a hassle, as I mean to intercept an airborne enemy with a punch to his stupid ninja schnoz, only to throw a minimal damage-inducing throwing star. Now, my biggest issue with the combat is that the characters all feel really floaty. In any of the Dragon Ball Z games, it's fine, as you're in the air quite often, but the game puts some weight on the controls should you ever touch the ground. In Full Burst, such isn't so. You feel like you're on the moon, regardless of your location. Your character doesn't run so much as they make a running motion and glide along the ground. It feels more like I'm controlling Sonic the Hedgehog than Naruto. The combat comes down to pretty much 3 buttons. B, Y, and there's the left trigger. The combos are pretty fun to watch at first, but there's not all that much variety in them, and they get tiring over time. Should your opponent ever land an attack on you, that's what the left trigger is for, is you simply you tap the left trigger and you just vanish behind them. It makes the game kind of broken, and it makes certain fights a little less interesting, but there's a limit to how often you can do this, but your substitution gauge replenishes so quickly that you won't even notice. You can perform special moves, or jutsu, by tapping Y and then pressing attack, and for the first time watching them, they look really, really nice and impressive, and each one is a huge visual treat. And to sum it up, Full Burst has so much eye candy that I'm fairly sure you could become diabetic just looking at it. But the shallow combat and robotic character animations and a story geared solely towards the die-hard Naruto fans, the average certainly does not outweigh what good the game has. I mean, the average certainly does outweigh the good the game has. And that's mostly how I feel about the series as a whole. Average. It has its good moments, but it ultimately feels like an inferior retread of Dragon Ball Z. And we already had an inferior retread of Dragon Ball Z. It's called Dragon Ball GT. The game itself is pretty good. It's not terrible, but it's hardly amazing. If you're a fan of Naruto, you already know if you want it or not. But for someone who isn't a big fan, I say try it out. It's surprisingly good, and while it doesn't do anything to ease newcomers into the franchise, it is still a blast to play. Easily, the game is a 7 out of 10. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, why don't you click on the subscribe button below, so you can get the VG Viking's new stuff as soon as it comes out. Speaking of the VG Viking, I'm totally him, and you can actually stalk him on that new Twitter thing that just came out like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, why don't you do that? It's on my channel page, and I hope to hear some more from you guys later. Thanks for watching.